Hey everybody, the beers are local, the lobsters are fresh, and we are in the most northeastern state in the Union. I'm Samuel George, back with another 2024 Bertelsmann Foundation Election Dispatch, and today we are in the state of Maine. So this absolutely gorgeous corner of New England sits way up north on the map. Large chunks of Maine sit north of Canadian cities such as Toronto, Montreal, and Quebec City. It's an area that gets really rough and long winters where the sun sets at like 4 p.m. for months at a time. But then it gets these really breezy, calm summers. Now it's a rugged and rural state, and it's somewhat politically split. You know, most of New England is very Democratic. But out here, you got 36% of adults registered as Republicans and another 17% registered as independents. And Republicans do win here in Maine. For example, Susan Collins, a Republican, has held her Senate seat since 1996. That's a Senate seat the Democrats would love to have, especially considering how tight the battle for the Senate is. And they think they should win it. I mean, this is New England after all. This is Democratic territory. They just can't seem to pry it away from her. Now, how does she pull that off? Well, one thing Susan Collins does really well is she focuses on her Maine roots. She's been able to make her opponents look like they're playing Washington games, these national battles between Republicans and Democrats. Meanwhile, Susan Collins has always been able to come off as if her focus is always on Maine, this unique remote part of the country. That matters to people around here. So with that in mind, what's on tap for Maine in 2024? This is a small state with 4 electoral college votes in play. And one thing that makes it different from almost every other state in the Union is the presidential vote here is not winner take all. Instead, Maine awards 2 electoral college votes for whoever wins the popular vote in the state. Then it awards 1 electoral college vote for the winner of each of the 2 districts in Maine. So presidential candidates can split the state of Maine. The only other state where that can happen is Nebraska. The Democrats have won the popular vote here in every election after 1988, and they expect to win it again this year. But it's getting closer and closer, and Republicans believe they have a shot. From my informal observation out here in rural Maine, I'm seeing way more signs for Donald Trump than I am for Joe Biden. Now, we did drive by a sign for Joe Biden the other day, but when we got close enough to read it, we saw that sign had another word in front of it that started with the letter F. Now, the vote in the 2 congressional districts split in 2016 and 2020. And if that happens again in 2024, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump will leave this state with something. And who knows? In these incredibly close elections, it's always possible that one electoral vote will make a difference. One last thing about Maine. You know, it's tough to think about it when you're out here in this amazing beauty. But the truth is, the United States of America has a major problem with gun violence. It's violence that can take many forms. It can be suicides, it can be related to drug trafficking, and then of course there's the problem of mass shootings. And that's very frustrating for so many Americans that want to do something about that. They want to live in a country with less gun violence. But politically it's been almost impossible. So why am I bringing that up in the middle of this beautiful nature? Well, in 2023, Maine unfortunately had one of these terrible mass shooting events. 18 people were killed, something unthinkably horrible, and yet something that occurs all too frequently in the United States. But then something interesting happened. Maine is a very pro-gun state, but after that tragic event, even some very pro-gun politicians came around and said, hey, we need to do something about this. Take Independent Senator Angus King. Guy's always been pro-gun. But after the tragic events of 2023, even he showed some flexibility. He co-introduced a bill that would get some of these assault rifles off the street, and it would also ban those bump stocks. These are devices that will make a rifle function like a machine gun. Now, these are baby steps, but this is a country that has always struggled to take baby steps on gun safety. And the fact that it's occurring in Maine, a state where 50% of adults live in households with guns, well, that's saying something. Now, Angus King is up for election in 2024, and he's got a big lead in the polls. So maybe his ideas aren't so unpopular after all. At the end of the day, the voters will have their say, and that's something we're going to be keeping a close eye on here in 2024.